The Gold Hoarder is one of the most, if not the most iconic skeleton lords. Unlike the fearsome Captain Flameheart or the cold and ruthless Gideon Greymarrow, yes, that is his real name, the Gold Hoarder has a somewhat tragic backstory and maybe the most tragic character in Sea of Thieves. But to understand his origins, we have to go back to the earliest period of modern history in the Sea of Thieves. The Gold Hoarder wasn't always the monster we see him today. Mike Chapman, the design director, has gone on record to say skeleton lords tend to be an exaggeration of everything they are, at their core, when they were human. I personally believe there is a touch of destiny with the characters in the Sea of Thieves, but the Gold Hoarder looks and behaves how he does because he possesses some greed. He always has done. On the other hand, that greed was left unchecked by his former friend and captain. Rathbone, before he became the leader of the Gold Hoarders, was a somewhat normal man. He came from a wealthy family and spent much of his youth around bankers and businessmen, with his father's fortune paying for his education. He was an aggressive businessman, always keen to strike a deal, but this greed festered with Rathbone, causing him to snatch deals out from under his rivals' noses, undercutting them, and cheating very powerful people. This culminated in the local governor attempting to arrest him. He fled following the seizing of his assets, and soon found himself a pirate. Rathbone was noted to have an English accent similar to that of aristocracy, he had bronzed skin from the sun, a shaved head bearing a couple of scars, he dressed well and took every opportunity to keep on top of his appearance, including shaving every day. Rathbone was originally part of the Pirate Lord's crew and was one of the 4 first modern pirates to rediscover the Sea of Thieves. This crew is made up of Ramsay, Rathbone, Mercia and Shan. The 4 pirates formed the crew of the Magpie's Wing. While Rathbone did join the voyage for the potential treasures found in the Sea of Thieves, as was the purpose of the initial voyage, very early on his treachery would lead to his eventual downfall. Most notably, following their return from their maiden voyage, Rathbone sold a copy of the charts leading to the Sea of Thieves to Stitcher Jim. The Pirate Lord, or Ramsay as he was then, decided he would keep the Sea of Thieves a secret from the other pirates seeking it. While his motives for disagreeing with Ramsay are not entirely clear, it seemed to be a business-related move, as Rathbone saw the vast amount of treasure as too much for one crew to claim. It may have been Rathbone not being in control of the situation, as Ramsay controlling the Sea of Thieves, as his captain, weakened Rathbone's position. So he sold Jim a map in exchange for loyalty and the remnants of his coin purse. This act made the Sea of Thieves go from wild frontier to a literal gold rush, with crews vying for control of the treasures inside, much like we see today. Pirates noble and villainous would seek to carve out a piece of it for themselves. While lots of events go on in the background, Ramsay and his fellow crewmate Mercia change objectives into protecting the Sea of Thieves, and the pirates exploring it from the curses that lie within. Rathbone and Shan are largely ignored from this plan. Ramsay becomes so obsessed with his quest for nobility, Rathbone is able to slink away to do dodgy dealings with Stitcher Jim. Ramsay has learnt the history of the Sea of Thieves, the merfolk that still inhabit it, and the ancients that came before them, yet Rathbone signed up to strike it rich, which, in fairness to Rathbone, was always the original goal. This would come to a head when a reawakened Kraken attacked Golden Sands outpost, with the crew of the Morningstar, Briggsea and the Magpie's Wing teaming up to protect the outpost. Ramsay was gravely injured by the Kraken, with his leg being broken and left dangling off its ship. Rathbone then takes this opportunity to betray the Pirate Lord. See, Ramsay had locked away vast amounts of his loot in cursed chests, with skeleton keys being the only way to open them. This was an effort to make the pirates of the Sea of Thieves work together, and they'd be forced to ally with Ramsay to unlock his treasures. It was also partially to stop people being cursed, as Ramsay didn't want the Sea of Thieves to be a dog-eat-dog world, for he deemed it too dangerous. Once again, Rathbone was not keen on the idea of being subservient to Ramsay. Rathbone plucked the keys from Ramsay at this moment, along with his wedding ring, dropping him into the depths. Rathbone had tried to convince Ramsay that saving the Sea of Thieves, the Alliance, and the idea of him ruling the Sea of Thieves as nonsense. But most importantly, through all of their adventures, Ramsay kept secrets from Shan and Rathbone, never filling them in on why they were helping the merfolk while promising him riches all the way. Upon returning to the outpost, Rathbone lied to the remainder of the Alliance and his crew, saying Ramsay had been taken by the Kraken in battle. Rathbone fled shortly before Ramsay was discovered to be alive, with Mercia suspecting him of causing Ramsay's supposed death. He met up with Stitcher Jim and his gang, and the Proto-Gold Hoarders were formed. He returned to the outside world with the treasure the Gold Hoarder gang amassed. He established them as a legitimate business. Pirates looking to make some gold would travel to obtain these chests and split them amongst themselves, but the Gold Hoarders became the ire of many pirates travelling in and out of the Sea of Thieves. and few of the Gold Hoarders were good fighters. Rathbone hatched a plan to install representatives at each outpost, and any pirates would have to bring the chest to the reps to unlock them, with the Gold Hoarders keeping most of the treasure. He hated this, but deemed it better than losing all of the treasure. Ramsay, discovered alive but not well, had formed his own venture, Athena's Fortune, and they were hell-bent on intercepting these convoys to the Gold Hoarder. Athena's Fortune were powerful too, since any slight on the alliance would draw the attention from all other members. No one, well, almost no one, would dare oppose the Pirate Lord because of this, even the Gold Hoarder and his immense wealth. Eventually, Rathbone would become stupidly rich with almost no risk. He was always greedy, but talk of a hoard beyond anyone's imagination spurred him into action, 20 years after his betrayal of his former captain. The Shores of Gold beckoned his name. Instead of risking contractors to betray him, Rathbone returned to the Sea of Thieves to seek out this hoard for himself. Into the wilds he ventured, eventually making his way to Tribute Peak. Tribute Peak, while we don't know the exact importance, had huge significance to the ancients and is often enveloped in the Devil's Shroud, but not at this time. Rathbone discovered the entrance to an underground vault by a circle of rocks, leading to a twisting network of caverns and ancient ruins. Then he found the throne room, stacked high with all manner of gewgaws, trinkets, and treasures. Finding his personal Shangri-La, he began to ferry the treasure to his sloop, but not before sitting on the throne that resided there. Rathbone would manage to fill his sloop almost completely, causing it to sag in the water. Upon leaving the Shores of Gold, he would encounter Eli Slate and Mercia, who laid a trap for him. Rathbone began to change, his arm becoming heavy, laden with gold. It's unclear if the throne, the treasure, or something else had cursed him, but Rathbone was afflicted with a curse nonetheless. Rathbone was sunk by the members of Athena's Fortune. The sloop, the gold, and Rathbone all sunk into the depths. Rathbone, unable to die and unable to float on account of his new heft, was left to die, and death would never truly come. At this point, he was also afflicted with the skeleton curse. His skin would peel back, parts of him would drop off, and Rathbone eventually would become the Gold Hoarder. It took countless years, but the scattered gold was recovered from the ocean floor and returned to the throne room, becoming the Gold Hoarder's dwelling from then onwards. His Gold Hoarders would bring tribute to him regularly from the treasure fetched from players like you and I. The throne room would also be a place for inducting new members into the trading company. It was shortly after this time that Briggsy would seek the Shores of Gold and meet her partial end at the hand of the Gold Hoarder, him afflicting her with the skeleton curse that he too suffered from, partially as a punishment for her intruding on his hoard. It was many years later that Ramsay, at the end of his life, would visit the Gold Hoarder one last time. He would come to apologise for his actions those years ago, and partially blamed himself for what became of Rathbone, but he reaffirmed the Gold Hoarder was wrong to see the Sea of Thieves just for its profit. Despite being extremely wealthy, the Gold Hoarder was the poorest pirate Ramsay knew. We see this attitude reflected at the end of the Shores of Gold story, personifying it's not about the gold, it's about the glory. Many years would pass until a new crew, the players, would seek out the Shores of Gold. After recovering and rebuilding the Shroudbreaker, the tool Briggsy used to get to Tribute Peak, they would then confront the Gold Hoarder in his chambers, killing him and selling his skull to the Order of Souls. These events are covered in the Shores of Gold Tall Tale series. 2 years following the events of the Shores of Gold, the Gold Hoarder's skull and remains are recovered through some unknown means by the Dark Brethren. It is unlikely that the Gold Hoarder's soul was in the Sea of the Damned for it to be recovered in that way, so it's very possible the Order of Souls had it stolen from them. The Dark Brethren is made up of some of the most fearsome pirates to sail the Sea of Thieves, so someone like Duke may have been the one to take it. The Gold Hoarder struck a bargain with Davy Jones, his loyalty for Hernan Cortez's hoard of Aztec gold. Thankfully, as the Gold Hoarder was twice cursed, he could not become a skeleton once again. The Gold Hoarder shows up in the Dark Brethren tall tale, where he asks Jones where the captain is, the former captain of the Burning Blade, and supposed leader of the Dark Brethren. It is shortly after the Gold Hoarder is beaten once again, while buying time for Davy Jones to complete his ritual to begin the merging of the Sea of the Damned and the Sea of Thieves. Many months later, the Gold Hoarder's remains would be exhumed by Amaranta, the Dark Brethren's latest recruit. In the years between his death and the defeat at the Shores of Gold, the Gold Hoarder had found 2 Veil Stones, likely at Tribute Peak itself. He used these brilliant green gems to replace his eyes, not knowing their power. The Veil Stones can be used by the Veil of the Ancients to access and return from the Sea of the Damned, but using them for eyes meant the Gold Hoarder could see into the Sea of the Damned and the treasures that lay there, but without the veil, he could only look. While already driven somewhat mad by his curse, this forever out of reach treasure would drive him insane. With a trident of dark tides and some wisdom from the Order of Souls, the Gold Hoarder's skull was fused into a new artifact, allowing for free travel between the realms, and is where the Gold Hoarder's fate ultimately concludes, transformed into a staff and tool for the Dark Brethren. These events are covered by the, now removed, adventure The Forsaken Hunter. The Gold Hoarders, learning of Rathbone's fate, would see a new leader take his place. Hogarth the Hoarder seizes the throne at the Shores of Gold and becomes the new leader of the Gold Hoarders. This was covered in the second mystery, The Hoarder's Hunt, but you can't see these changes reflected in the game.